Hey everybody, this is Eric Brown, your Beverly Hills real estate agent, bringing with you again the best of LA, where we share the best and brightest of Los Angeles area businesses here for you. Now, I have a special treat. I'm with my friend Mark Nichols of MNichols Design, and today we're going to be talking about architecture. So with that being said, Mark, take it away. Share us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, so I started my business back in 2019 at MNichols Design. And it was a bit nerve-wracking when I went out on my own, and after a few months of searching and trying to get leads, it's like the well broke open, and I've been happily taking on lots of different projects throughout the LA area since.
And we are here in the middle of one of those projects right now. And so in my experience with architecture, there's a lot of different services or directions that you can go. Do you have specialties or things that are really a focus in today's market? Take that away any direction you like.
So I specialize in two types of architecture: single-family residential architecture, and then what's considered commercial or larger scale mixed-use multifamily projects. Most of my projects, single-family projects, have been in the greater LA area, and all different types of scales, from ADUs and small remodels all the way up to large hillside residences, 10,000 square feet or bigger.
Sure, that's great. And so are you starting to see, not only in the residential space, but because you also are multifaceted in the commercial world, are you seeing anything that's trending? What has changed over the past several years?
So in my particular sector, and this is tied into recent legislation, but everyone's wants to do an ADU or is curious about an ADU, and then an even newer piece of legislation, SB 9 and 10, allows most single-family residences to split up their lot and do a duplex, with even 2 additional ADUs in the back behind each duplex. And given that huge change that's coming for LA, there's a lot of interest in that, and there's a lot of buzz, a lot of speculation for how that's going to change the character of neighborhoods, and then that's really where I fit in. So how can you go about doing that project where you can split up your property, even if it's kind of a smaller lot, and still make it a really nice design and hopefully preserves the nicer character of the mini residential neighborhoods in LA?
So I know your business and my business have some similarities in the fact that we're a bigger ticket item. Somebody doesn't make a huge remodel or an addition or do a major investment every day. So I found that some people have some fear around the process and like just trying to learn, what's it like to buy a house? What's it like to sell a house? I would guess you get that same thing. So how do you walk them through the initial process and give that education so they can feel comfortable?
Yeah, I try to soften the blow when they first ask the question, because they may have a certain expectation for cost or timeline, but I find it's always better to be upfront about what they're going to expect and what they may not be considering. Usually the 2 biggest things are the cost of construction, and it's going up by the day, giving them a reasonable sense for what their project's going to cost, and then also walking them through the timeline. So what decisions they need to make during the timeline, what my role will be, and then there was usually a few different consultants we have to work with, along with general contractors. So letting them know the project team, each step that goes into the design and eventual construction of the project, and if their eyes aren't too glazed over and they're still eager to do it, then I know we probably have a good project and they're ready to go.
Well, and you had mentioned this off camera, but a lot of people don't have realistic expectations of timelines. And so particularly here in LA, where the permitting process is maybe a little bit different than other cities or other states, working with different vendors, working in this general climate. So can you talk a bit about timeline in a little bit more expansive way?
Yeah, so most clients will come to me and say, oh, we have this project. Usually they might be smaller projects like an ADU project, so they have this notion of smaller project, less complicated, easier to get a permit or quicker to get a permit. And that's true to a certain extent, but there is a bare minimum of time even for a small project, whereas you have to come up with the initial design. That can take anywhere to a month and a half, 3 months. It can take much longer if the client wants to keep revising or isn't quite satisfied with what they're getting. And sometimes clients just like to tweak things. Other clients can make decisions really quickly, but that's a good month and a half to 3 months. Once the design's locked down, then you bring on consultants like a structural engineer. So if you're moving load-bearing walls or you're building additions or any new structure, you'll need a structural engineer. They usually take about a month and a half or longer. A month and a half is if it's a small project, because they have to do drawings and calculations. And then after that, there's a few other consultants you may or may not have to work with. Their timeline's about the same. You would work with them at the same time you're working with the structural engineer. Then after that, you submit to the city of LA. So it's at least 3.5 to 4 months before you've even submitted for a permit. And then the quickest you could get through city of LA is probably 4 months. And that's if you've been really wise about when you've submitted to different agencies. So you've already submitted to LADWP if you have to go through them for a clearance. Any other department you can submit to early you have. 4 months is very optimistic. It's probably 6 months or more. So, if you think you're going to get a permit soon, even for a small project, anticipate like 7 to 9 months. Wrap your head around that number and know it could go even longer, especially for more complicated projects.
And that's the permitting process. So hopefully you can tell, just in this conversation alone, that Mark and his team are a wealth of knowledge. And he's had the really good fortune of having a volume of his business only in the past several years come a lot or mostly from referrals. So Mark, that's a testament to, I'm sure, the skill sets and the knowledge and the education that you offer your clients. What else can you say as to why someone would pick you versus other architectural options?
Right. So if it is a referral, I already have the benefit of they've either seen some of my other work and they like what I've done, which helps. That definitely breaks the ice and gives me a lot of positive momentum. I would also say it's then the follow-up and how forthright someone is. So when they're curious about the project, the more you tell them up front, you have to do it tactfully and you don't want to overwhelm them. But usually the clients that want to keep going with me like that they think I'm being straightforward with them and giving them the most information they can so they can make an informed decision. There's other architects that may not want, they don't want to scare the client away or don't want to get too technical, so may not be as communicative. Another very typical thing that architects do is we get very engrossed in our work and aren't the best communicators or don't follow up well. So just the basics of being attentive to the client and having that come across in communication, I think helps move them past the sort of initial referral to wanting to work with you. They feel like you've listened to them, you're going to be clear with them, and they feel like you're going to address their needs.
It's so interesting. Somehow it's just the most simple of things, of being a good communicator. We can be well experienced in our respective professions, but just being a good person, just being able to be an effective speaker and being able to understand someone's wants and needs. So I echo that same sentiment. As we wrap up our video today, Mark, is there anything as we roll forward into the subsequent months and year that you think people should know about your world in architecture?
Yeah, although things might be a little bit slow in the real estate world, there's definitely opportunities through ADUs or SB9 projects, or if you have a remodel you've been thinking about. One, don't go to a general contractor first. Go to an architect. You want to fully have your design thought through, well planned out. Before you engage a general contractor, you'll get more realistic estimates from them. They'll have a better sense of what your scope is. If they just come to your house, which they typically like to do, they'll walk the site, you'll talk them through what you want to do. They'll try to come up with an estimate in their head based purely on your narrative, which it's okay. It's a good first initial ballpark figure for what your project's going to cost. But really having a thought-out design with a plan set, ideally what I would call a plan check set, so architectural and structural, will get you a much more competent bid, and will also allow you to better communicate to the general contractor what you want, and it'll also help, I think, weed out the general contractors that don't get it. And then in addition to that, reach out to an architect, because we can help you visualize in the early stages. If you're taking on a project, you want it to be your own, you have certain needs, you have a certain look you want it to achieve, and that's where working with someone like me really pays off. We can visualize with real-time rendering, with virtual reality, and there's no limit to renderings, there's no limit to the visuals, to the iterations we can do, so you can get it right, and with the high level of confidence that it's right, based on the photoreal renderings that you're seeing, that, hey, yeah, this is the project I want, So with the different visuals that an architect can provide you, you'll know what your design is going to be. You'll head into the estimating and permitting and plan check process with greater confidence that you're going to get the project that you want. And most importantly, it's easier to make changes when it's on paper. Frank Lloyd Wright said it's easier to change something with an eraser than a jackhammer. So come to an architect first, we'll get you what you want, and ultimately we likely can reduce the cost than if you of construction if you didn't go with us, just because we know what you want to do and we know the most effective way to accomplish it.
One thing that Mark has not also shared is his ability to multitask. You've heard all the noise and the construction in the background, and this is the world of an architect as you're dealing with all of these different parties. So again, kudos to Mark and his team for dealing with all these types of projects and noises around us. Mark, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time. We're going to include all of Mark's contact information. You can touch base anytime if you have questions. Just like Mark said, start with that conversation. If there's needs that you have, it's great to have a resource in your pocket whenever you need. As always, this is Eric Brown, your Beverly Hills real estate agent, sharing with you the best of LA. Excited to connect the next time. Take care.